Hey guys, it's Ilana, and welcome back to another episode of Seeing Other People. I am so excited for today's episode. I just want to get right into it. We are bringing on Matt Wurnig, who is the founder of 50 Dates, 50 States, and that's exactly what Matt is doing. He is going around the country, going on a date in every state, and his journey is so cool to hear about. A lot of you have been writing into us asking about what dating is like in different places in the country, because obviously we talk about dating in New York a lot, but I can't really speak to dating in other places because I haven't done that much of it. So I thought Matt would be the perfect person to bring on, and I just recorded the episode. I rushed to do the intro because I'm like on a high from it. I was smiling so much the entire time, and he is doing such a cool and unique thing and meeting so many incredible people. And I can't wait for y'all to hear about it. So before we get right in, just a reminder, make sure you are following if you're listening on Spotify, or subscribed if you're listening on Apple or wherever else you're listening. Make sure you are hooked in so you get all of our episodes when they launch, so you don't miss a beat. And make sure you have followed us on Instagram or whatever platform you love to consume your social media on. We have a lot of great content coming out all the time. And lastly, if you are not yet a Patreon subscriber, or I guess a Patreon patron, I don't know, words are hard. But make sure you check out all the things we have to offer on Patreon. We are doing some really cool things over there, like bonus episodes, and my favorite thing, which is you can actually get your dating app profile totally revamped. I will hop on a call with you over Zoom and we'll talk for a half hour. We will literally change the world in that half hour. Not actually, but maybe we'll do some really cool things that will help improve your dating profile and help you find the person of your dreams. Who knows? Anything is possible. All right, 50 dates, 50 states. Let's do it. Let's bring Matt into the episode. All right, and now we are here with Matt Wurnig in the episode. Matt, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be on.
Thank you for being here. So, Matt, can you set the stage and let our listeners know where you are in the world, how many dates you've been on, and a little bit about yourself? Like, who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the creator of 50 Days, 50 States, which entails me traveling around the U.S., going on a date with a girl, a different girl in every single state. And so I'm currently in Minnesota, and I just completed my 45th date in my 45th state. And so I'm on the very tail end, only 5 states left in this whole journey. And it all began back in 2020 when COVID first hit. And, I went on a virtual date with a girl in every state when everybody was at home quarantined, didn't really know what was going on. And from there, I, got the wheels turning, was putting out highlights. And once it gained traction, that's when I decided to go meet them all in person.
Wow. So you're meeting all of the people that you did the virtual dates with in person?
Yes. Yep.
Wow, that is so cool. Okay, that part of the story I did not know. Okay, that's really, really awesome. So where are you originally from, and what got you doing this when you were sitting at home quarantined in COVID? Like, what made you think like, oh, I'm going to go on all these dates with people in different places?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Montana, but then went to school out in North Dakota. And after I finished school in North Dakota, I was working for a baseball team out there, where my old job title, I was the director of fun. Great title. And I handled all of our entertainment and things like that. And once quarantine hit and I was at home, like I was still working, but just from home. And I think it was like a weekend or something like that. Some of my friends were over, and we were like my roommates were there. That's what it was. And we were just, all sitting there on our phones, like bored. That's when COVID first hit, and everybody was just like looking at ways to be entertained. Everything was shut down. Nobody really knew what was going on. And I remember I hopped on Tinder, and it said like their passport mode popped up where you could place your location anywhere for free. And I remember I was in North Dakota at the time. So I started placing my location, and the big cities, the glamorous cities of New York and LA and Boston and Dallas, all that stuff. And once I started getting matches, I didn't really understand, like, I was like, oh, it's just a confidence booster, if anything. I can't like ask to, go have drinks or dinner or anything. And so I knew Zoom was on the rise, and I knew everyone was like, I knew TikTok was kind of becoming a big thing and all that stuff. And so I just decided to, for some reason, it like hit me and a light went off in my head. And it was like, what if I tried to go on a virtual date in every state? And then from there, I had like, all I had was just my desk, a big whiteboard, a US map. And I just would like schedule times and try and go on dates. And it was like such a puzzle looking back, and it's still a puzzle, but I mean, oh my goodness, it was crazy like how it got the ball rolling and how it just like started. But I just was like doing random stuff to make it work.
I mean, you basically became the director of fun of your own life.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's a great way of saying it. And I think like once I started diving into like that content creator type world, it was really fun, and it was. And so like going to what you just said, yeah, I liked doing that for like my own instead of necessarily for like another business and things like that. So it was cool to take that jump and do this full time.
Yeah, I totally relate to that because I have done a lot of content for a lot of different companies, but then there's something so different about doing it for yourself, and you like also get to like learn more about yourself and see what different things you're interested in, which is really cool. So I have a lot of respect for that.
Right. Well, did you? I know you said you used to work for Hinge. Did you do you do the podcast full time?
So now I'm a freelancer. The podcast takes up like a third of my time. And then I still do some content for other clients, but I also have been really focusing on my own content.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
See, yeah, it's awesome. Like you said, when you dive into that own world, like it's cool to be your own boss and have like, I mean, you can work with so many different arrays of people as long as you're holding yourself accountable. It's nice though.
Exactly. Mindset Wellness CBD, Mindset Wellness CBD, Mindset Wellness CBD. Yes, I'm going to continuously brag about how amazing all of Mindset Wellness CBD's CBD gummies are because I genuinely am so obsessed with them. Everyone needs to try these things. I think I have gotten all of my friends hooked on them because they all come over and they're like, oh my God, I need to try them. And I'm like, oh, like, I don't want to give mine away because I want them all, but I also want my friends to experience how great they are. And I'm not even kidding. My new, like, the obsession within Mindset Wellness CBD, because yes, I have an obsession within my obsession, is the focus gummies. They are incredible. Anytime I have a busy work day coming up, I wake up, I do my little morning routine, which really just consists of getting out of bed, brushing my teeth, and making coffee, and then I pop a focus gummy and I power through my to-do list like there is no tomorrow. And it is such a great, rewarding feeling, and I love it. And I'm so grateful for these focus gummies. So definitely check them out. Get your hands on some. If you have not yet, head to mindsetwellnesscbd.com. Use code Seeing Other People at checkout for 10% off and free shipping. Back to the app. Okay, so when you were doing these virtual dates, what were the conversations like? Like, were they all... I mean, I have to imagine that like some of them were pretty like surface level and others like took a turn and went in like a million different directions. Like, what were these conversations like? Were there any that really like stuck out to you? And how did you kind of approach each, being like, well, like we might never meet, but hey.
Yeah. So when I slid into like the DMs of, or like if that's what you call it on Tinder.
The Tinder message.
Yeah. But like when I started getting matches, I basically like, I never tried to get to know them really. I just I didn't have time to like try and build this conversation and like let out something mend from it and then ask. I basically went right out the gate and I would like do a little hook to try and get people interested. I'd either say something like, hey, would you consider yourself a fun and outgoing gal? And then most girls would be like, oh, I don't want to say no, or what's his motive to this? They like kind of want to hear what like the end of that question is, what it's leading to. And so I'd either say that, or I'd say this one was, I usually use this one, but I would always say like, I bet what I'm about to ask you, you have never been asked in your whole life. And like, rightfully so. I feel like no one's ever asked somebody to be part of what I was doing. And so then, once they said yes or sure, whatever it is, then I would be like, yeah, I'm starting this thing called 50 Days, 50 States. I'm trying to go on a virtual date with a girl in every state. Like, I'd love it if you could be my California date. You could be my Kentucky date, like just like, whatever state they were in. And from there, like if they agreed to it, we set up a time. And then when we went on the virtual dates, yeah, like I tried to make them interesting, and it sucks sometimes because there is only so much you could do virtually Like, there's
Hmm.
kind of a ceiling to it. But I did try to make them interesting, whether it was me, it being in like a wacky, colorful suit or like tuxedo type thing. Or sometimes I would have dinner delivered to their house. Like I'd ask if I could get their address, and I'd like order them a pizza and get it to their house and everything. Or I'd do like a magic trick, or we'd have like a happy hour, or we'd have morning mimosas. Like I would try to do things that were fun and a little different, so it wasn't just constantly like, "Oh, what year are you in school?" or like, "What's your favorite
Hmm.
food?" Like it wasn't just the basic stuff. But I mean, some of those. I mean, a lot of the dates cover a lot of those general things of the
Of
similar
course.
questions and things like that. And I remember in the beginning, I had like a list of questions just in case things were like dull or I couldn't think of something to say. And I'd like go to the basic, like, "Oh, so how's COVID where you are?" Like something just basic, or
Yeah.
"How's the weather there?" And but I mean, I only did that for like a couple dates, and then I mean, it just I can talk to the I could talk to the wall behind me for 10 minutes, and so I can just have a conversation pretty naturally, and so they were all really good that way, and some obviously we like they were more like fun or playful than others, but they all went like really well. I thought there were some like that were a little more awkward and whatnot, but it was pretty good for the most part.
That's so cool. And I really like how you mentioned that you tried to make them fun and like came up with all these different things to do. And I think that's so important for people to think about when they're planning dates in real life, which of course we're going to get to. But
Yeah.
sometimes people are like, oh, like first dates are so boring, or like first dates are just the same like job interview every time and it's the same
Yeah.
conversation. And it can be, but it also doesn't have to be. But it does take a little bit of effort to come up with an idea that's going to break the ice a little and not have it be like that.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's like it just depends on different personalities and things
Yeah.
like that. Or people getting to know each other for the first time or being shy. I remember some of my virtual dates, they were like, it's so crazy to think about this now, and I'm like, what was I doing? But I remember like some of them were like 4, 5, 6 hours long. They were just like very long
Wow.
virtual dates where we just talked and talked and talked and talked. And I was like, that's just so much with a random stranger. Like it really is.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seemed to go all right.
So after some of these like longer and more intense virtual dates, were you like continuing to talk to these people?
Yeah, so I mean, I asked them like all if I'd be able to record the Zoom and put out highlights and things like that. And so when I did that, I would talk to them about like when I put their highlight together, I'd send it to them, be like, "Oh, what do you think of this?" or "This was pretty funny," or and
Mhm.
things like that. But I didn't really. I mean, it wasn't too much constant communication. I remember I always wanted to. At the very end, I wanted to have all 50 in one Zoom chat.
Oh my God.
And so I told them all that like I'd be in contact with them when I wanted to set that up. Um,
Hmm.
and I got all their numbers too, because yeah, just for like texting with that and coordinating but I had never thought of like what I'm doing now with traveling everywhere. Like I didn't really think about that in the beginning.
Right.
I started kind of thinking about that the second half of my dates. But so I kept in communication with them here and there, and some more than others, but nothing like too drastic where we were texting every day and things like that.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so let's get into how and when you decided to actually take this in real life and go to all of these states and then meet these girls in person.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I started. I remember this. It was very similar, and I don't know like if it's coincidence or what, but or if I just have random lights that go off in my head. But like when I started this whole journey, like I said, a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, like I could do this, 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 and it was kind of similar for when I decided to go meet them all in person. I remember actually I was contacted by a group of producers out in LA, and they told me that they thought this would make for a good reality TV show. And it hit me then. I was like, oh my gosh, like this could be something a lot bigger than what I had imagined. And I remember I had got off we were in talks and things like that. Then I had got off a phone call with them, and they were basically saying how they were trying to get their feet wet in all kinds of different projects and things like that. And there were a smaller production company out there, and they didn't have a lot of connections, stuff like that. But they told me that they wanted me to continue to try and grow this. And so I
Hmm.
remember based on that conversation, I'm like, okay, well, what can I do that's bigger and better? And I remember that light bulb went off, and I just like immediately was like, okay, I'm gonna go get my truck wrapped. I'm gonna go travel everywhere. I'm gonna make these dates adventurous. I just like drawing on pieces of paper, like putting the blueprints together, like really trying to figure out how I could scale this thing. And so yeah, I just prepped and planned and finished out the rest of my dates. And then I decided I was going to quit my full-time job, and which was very scary. I mean, we kind of touched on it, but it's very intimidating because in this content creator influencer type world, it's money and finances are very sporadic. It's like, it's not just, oh, you get your, weekly paycheck or biweekly paycheck. It's
Right.
like, oh, this could happen, this could happen, this can happen. And so going from a steady income full-time job out of college, it was nerve wracking, but I have learned in my short, like 24 years that sometimes the money will come with these things, or you got to take risks, stuff like that. And so I took the jump, and I remember once I took the jump, I, started getting sponsors, and I was getting content put out there. And then on January 11th, that's when I hit the road, and I got back home, got everything squared away. And January 11th, I hit the road, and I was on my endeavor, I guess you'd say.
Wow. Okay. This is crazy. And also like props to you for taking the jump and leaving your job and going all in, because that is really, really scary to do, like you said. But I feel like it's one of the things in life that can be like the most rewarding, is like going off on your own and like kind of just telling yourself like, yeah, like I can do this on my own. Like I have this idea. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. And you're doing it. And it's just so cool to see how well that has gone.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I know. I think that's like, there's that point, and I think everybody's had a point where they're like, oh, do I do this, or all this is really scary. But I think honestly, it always works out in the long run for people who do make that jump, if they just stay committed or disciplined, because it's way better. I would way rather, this is like my mindset through a lot of it, was I would way rather go through this the whole thing and just say like I failed than not do it and say what if. Like that was 100% my mind. Yeah.
Love that. Okay, so you hit the road January 11th. How did you decide where to start? How early did you reach out to these girls when you were deciding like, okay, I'm going to go to this state at this point? Like, talk me through that.
Yeah. So I try to make it the most efficiently like mapped. I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm going to go to Oregon, and then I'm going to go to New York, and then I'm going to go to Texas. Like I wanted to try, that would be just brutal. But I wanted to try and map it out the most efficient way. So I just kind of, I started in Montana, and I didn't have my date in Montana, but since that's where I'm from, I want that to be my last one. And so
I love that.
Yeah. And so I went to like down to Wyoming, and then I hit the whole West Coast, like up by Idaho and Washington and Oregon and California, and circled up through there a little bit, and then zigzagged through the Midwest, and then down, hit the South, the whole East Coast, and now I'm wrapping around back in that Midwest, back leading to Montana. And so I tried to just map it out that way. And when I coordinated with dates, I told them all that I wanted to give them a heads up. I never wanted to like text them a day before and be like, hey, I'm in town, you ready? I wanted to make sure it was planned and prepared and communicated with. And at first I tried to get I was going to try and schedule every single one of my dates. I was going to try to schedule them all out, but on the road, like living on the road, it's very, it's a domino effect. And there's so many schedules. There's 50 different schedules plus my own that you have to work with. And all these girls have, they're either in college, they have part-time jobs, they have full-time jobs, their families visiting, they're on vacation, like all sorts of different stuff. And so I had to make sure I was in certain areas at certain times, or making sure things worked and the day and times worked out. And in the beginning, I was basically doing just date, travel, date, travel, date, travel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of tough doing that because I didn't, I felt like I was rushing through. I feel like some of these states, like I wasn't getting to experience everything the state had to offer, and things like that, which I wanted to focus a little bit more on with content building and stuff like that. So then I started to, take a little bit more time and build in an extra day in each state, stuff like that. But then I kind of got back to that date travel schedule as I went on. And, but yeah, I was just balancing a lot of schedules, and I also had all my dates plan the date. because
Ah,
I don't really know what there is to do for fun in those areas. And so I basically
right.
said, hey, like, you guys tell me the ins and outs or your favorite things to do or something you've always wanted to experience, stuff like that. And so they were rock stars. And I told them that I didn't want to go to 50 dates and have 50 dinner dates. I want to do fun stuff,
Right.
adventurous things. Because that, like, if I'm just going to dinner, having a conversation everywhere, that's not very engaging or intriguing.
Totally. Okay. So, oh my God, this is really like one of the coolest things I've ever heard about. And I'm like, part of me is really envious because I wish I could have done this, but I love hearing all about your experience. So, they were planning the dates. So, were the dates themselves, were they more like a friendly vibe, or was there any like actual romance involved? Like, did you make really deep connections with some of these girls while you were on the dates with them? And what was it like? Like, were there any times where like either of you kind of felt a little bit more like connected and you wanted to keep talking or like go on another date and stay? Like, how did that work? Because I know for me, like, I could go on a date with someone and fall in love after one date.
Really?
So yeah, so I feel like this would be, as much as I would want to do this, it would be really hard for me to like have these experiences with people and then leave.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I'm always very curious on that, and I mean, when I go into all these with more of like a friendly vibe to it,
Mhm.
because for me, I know I have a mission to accomplish, and so if I catch feelings on date 6, then I have 44 other dates where I'm like, darn, like
Yeah.
I just like fully committed to it, and so I've kind of trained myself and developed this mindset where I know I have, yeah, she's an awesome gal and we connected really well, but I'm leaving tomorrow to go see another date, and so
Hmm.
just kind of very weird, but like that's just how it is, and I mean, some dates I definitely think I found more of a connection with because some of them planned multiple days worth. So there were some where
Oh,
I had like 2 or 3 days with them because they had like a whole agenda planned and things like that.
wow.
And so I spent a lot more time with them, or I met their families. And with those things, obviously, like you just get, it's like a little more intimate already because you spend more time
Mhm.
with them and you're getting to know their life more. It's not just like, oh, we went on like a 4 hour date. It's like, oh, I've
Right.
known you for like 2 or 3 days now. So I feel like those were always harder states to leave, once you meet their family and do those things. But for the most part, I always went into more of a friendly atmosphere to it. And my followers, they always ask me, they say, how have you not caught feelings and stuff like that? And I'm curious, like what you said. I mean, if you like, do you think when you go on a date, like, do you like really get genuine with it? Like, are you like, oh, I could, like, you just wanted to continue? Is that like, would you catch feelings on the first date?
I really, I mean, my friends and I used to joke about this all the time. Like my first few years out of college, we had a jar in our apartment where we each had like a thing where if we did this thing or said this thing, we'd have to put $1 in the jar. And for me, it was every time Ilana comes home from a date and says, I fell in love, I have to put $1 in the jar.
Oh my goodness.
So I don't know what it is about me, but I really do. I mean, I'm also like, I'm definitely a hopeless romantic. Like I've always like wanted to just like find love and make like really deep connections with people. But
Uh-huh.
it's, it's really hard for me to go into something with the mindset of like, this is just like, this isn't like, this can't be a thing, you know? I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, that makes sense. That does make sense because then, like, on that side of it, it's almost like, what's the point, right? Like,
Hmm.
why go on a date if you're not gonna date them, or
Right.
right? Like, yeah, no, that makes sense, and I can see that. For me, I'm like, I feel like I have to spend a numerous amount of time with someone before I'm like, and maybe it's, I don't know, like I'm really picky too, and I feel like I just like will always like try and decipher something, even if I have a great time with someone in one day. I'm like, I need to figure out more about him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like always like that.
I mean, you know what? I'm envious of you in that sense because I think people like you who can have that mindset and go approach dating like that. I think you're bound to get hurt a lot less than people like me.
that I get what you're saying. Well, that's yeah, and I think it's like those people who have that heavy heart, where
Mhm.
they go into something and they go all in, and then
Yeah.
maybe the other person doesn't reciprocate that
Right.
as much, and then yeah, like someone catches feelings and they're committed to it in the first couple months of the relationship, or even like the first couple dates or whatever. And then if you get left on red, or you don't get a call back, or the relationship, the guy or girl isn't feeling it anymore, and it's just one of those things. Yeah, like the other person feels really bad who had those genuine committed feelings, I guess.
Right. What I will say though about the way that you're going about it is like, because usually I'd get almost like mad at my like friends who are like, oh, like I'm gonna go on this date, but like I'm not looking for anything. Like it's good the way you've set everything up where like they know what you're doing there. They know that you're leaving. They know that this is part of an adventure and an experience. And hopefully like the two of you will have a great time, like maybe learn something about each other, learn something about yourself, and then like continue or not this friendship down the road.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. And it's actually really interesting because I mean I discussed my side of it, and like you were saying, I've had they know what they're getting into. But from the girl side of it, some of them I can definitely tell, like I can definitely tell that they have more feelings towards me, where
Hmm.
others are like, oh, like he's in town, cool, let's have fun, we'll do our
Right.
date, and it's in they're like they like to be part of the experience, things like that. But yeah, some of them I can tell like they have more like that deep feeling towards it, or they get really nervous before they meet me, or
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's super interesting. It's almost like this like human personality case study in a way. It's just very
Yeah.
interesting, like these 50 personalities, how they all mend in different ways, or how they organize stuff, how they plan the dates, how they're emotionally attached, if like they're yeah, just their overall personality. It's very interesting.
I can imagine. And I mean that brings me to the big point here that I want to discuss, or one of the few big points is from like state to state and from date to date. Huh. Rhymes, more rhymes. That makes sense. What have you noticed or like talked about with them about what dating is like in these places? Because I can imagine it's very different in these places. And yes, you're going on dates that they're planning, but do you hear about like what dating is like within the world they live in? You know?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and yeah, I've definitely learned a lot about that. And I think what I've learned is just honestly a lot of like how people are raised in like the certain areas they're in. Like if you're raised in the heart of New York City, you are going to go into a relationship a lot differently than someone who grew up in a small farm town in Alabama. Like it's like you're not going to be the same, and it's just so interesting to see that in my dates, and kind of going back to what I was saying, like in their different personalities and perspectives. And I mean, sometimes there's the people who in their small town, they've dated everyone in their high school. That's no shame. That's just like,
Right.
that's just how it is. Like everybody does that. Like everybody in the high school is like swapping boyfriend, girlfriend, like they're doing their thing. It's just small town. Everybody knows each other. And then, so they're always used to being in a relationship. And so they just kind of bounce from relationship to relationship. Then there's others who you have a classroom, or classmates in school that there's thousands and thousands of kids. It's a huge school, so you don't know as many people, or maybe you weren't part of a popular group, or you didn't find that right person in high school because everybody was jerks or whatever it is, and so like you don't have that dating experience, and so you're more picky, or you don't know how to act in those ways. It's just so interesting, I guess, the backgrounds of people, and the environments they grew up in, and how that transfers, I guess, to where they are now with relationships.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think that's something we don't necessarily always consider. So like I'm from like a suburb of New York City and I live in New York City right now.
Uh-huh.
And I think one of the things about New York is that you really do have people from all over the country and all over the world coming and they're in your dating pool. So you have to kind of take a step back when you meet someone and think about like how they grew up and like what they were raised to like value and believe and then kind of take that into account when you're actually like starting to potentially pursue a relationship with them or date them because everyone really is different like you said. And I think that's something that we kind of forget because I think the and I'm trying to like think about how I want to say this, but I think we all go into something like on the surface level expecting other people to be like us.
100%. I agree. Yep.
And that's not at all the case, but we forget that. And then it's like, oh, surprise, like somebody was raised completely differently than you were, which
Yeah.
it's so cool how you are meeting so many different types of people with different personalities, like you said.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. Yeah. It's sometimes when you're so used to doing something yourself, you think it's so normal for everybody else to do. And
Mm-hmm.
then when it's not like that, you're like, oh, wait, what? It's like people in certain states talk a certain way, or like I remember like just like for example, like on the East Coast, how my mind was blown how people call like suckers lollipops,
Oh my
and
God.
and like we all call it suckers, but they call it lollipops, and like but just like going into that, it gets so normal for them, and for me, it's normal in a different way. And so it's like that, just those little things. But going into like the dating sense, like it could be normal for someone to open the door for someone and hold the door and do that, or it could be normal for someone to go to the door and give someone flowers, like things like that. Or sometimes it's normal for the guy to take the bill, whatever it is. Like it's so different on how you were raised, the background, small town, big town, all that stuff too. Another thing I find like super interesting about it is, and I don't know what this is, I still don't know what this stems from, but sometimes like, and this is for guys and girls, but like sometimes when you are a very, very good looking individual, like a guy or girl where, everybody knows you're good looking, stuff like that. uh,
Mhm.
there's an ego that comes with it. Like you think you're hot stuff, you think you're a little better, you like, you're praised, you're glorified, like you've been a ladies' man, or all the guys have chased you, whatever it is. And so sometimes that ego builds. And then there's some people who have those looks and they are just like the most humble, nice, genuine people. And like they like are just like, oh, you think I'm pretty, or that's very nice. And I haven't been able to figure out like why one person's this way and why another person isn't. It just that blows my mind. It's crazy to me.
That is really cool to realize and to kind of think about. And yeah, I do wonder what makes someone one way or the other way. And maybe it does have to do with like their surroundings and
Yeah.
the like culture of the world they're in. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
really crazy though.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so next question. What have there been any like over not over the top, but like dates that have really stood out? Like when you think back, obviously you still have a few dates left, so we're not discounting those, but the dates you've been on, what have been like the most memorable, or like if you were to replicate this experience for someone else, like what dates would you say like you have to do this, or like everybody has to do a date like this? What would those be?
Like the specific kind of like the specific things, maybe.
Yeah, like the activity, like the date activity or like the date
Okay.
plan.
Yeah, I think one thing I've enjoyed is I know in Colorado I did a cooking class, and then in Arkansas I did a salsa dancing class. And I remember the
Um,
classes like those are some of my favorite things I've done, because you're both learning together and you're both like experiencing something together. So it's like kind of fun. It's not like, and it's hands on. It's not like, oh, we're sitting together in a class learning about astronomy, or like, or,
right.
it's like it's hands on, it's fun. Like usually the instructors or the teachers are fun and they're like touristy and things like that. And so that was like really cool to do some of those like classes, whatever you might be doing with your significant other, whether that's painting or dancing or cooking, stuff like that. I think it's cool. I've enjoyed like visiting other environments, like in certain areas, and so I think it's healthy for people to like explore, whether it's hiking, going to national parks, going out and kayaking, go paddle boarding, like go out in little areas that might not be as well known. You don't have to go to everything that everybody knows, like Yellowstone National Park or Niagara Falls or the redwoods and things like that. But maybe
Mhm.
there's these other little spots that it's like, oh, only locals know, or if you just talk to a
Yeah.
couple people, they'll know. I think that stuff's really cool, and it's not as common, I guess you could say.
Imagine how great it could be if you could get a great night's sleep, wake up in the morning, get everything you need to do done for the day, and still have time to like actually enjoy yourself and take care of yourself and do a little self care or go see a friend. Oh, wait, you can do that. If you take a rest gummy from Mindset Wellness CBD at night, I guarantee you will have the perfect night's sleep to wake up and then take a focus gummy and get everything you need to do and more done for the day while feeling great. And CBD is not addictive or anything like that. It's not a drug and it's totally legal and safe and healthy. And Mindset Wellness CBD's gummies are also non GMO, gluten free, vegan, all that amazing stuff. And they taste incredible. So it's like a million wins and no losses by taking Mindset Wellness CBD's gummies. So I love them. I take them every day, and you 100% should too. So hopefully you have by now, but if you haven't, head to mindsetwellnesscbd.com and of course use code seeing other people at checkout for 10% off and free shipping. I think it's so cool that you're going to like these specific like towns where these people live. It's not like you're going to the big cities or like the touristy destinations. Like you're actually meeting them where they're at, right?
Yeah, for sure. And some of them do like take me to a bigger spot and things like that, just for reference and things to do and whatnot. But sometimes like it'd be cooler to, instead of going to the Las Vegas Strip, maybe going to this other part of Vegas that nobody knows about. So you could, like, you never know. And so I think those are always really cool things. Some more, I think it also makes it more intimate in a way. Like it's not just like, oh, you're a tourist and you're taking pictures by this, and it's the common stuff. I mean, obviously
Definitely.
a lot of those things are really cool to see. But sometimes if it's just you and her in a hole in the wall bar that's been around since the 80s or something, I don't know. Like it's just kind of cool to, like, there's like a story behind it in a way.
Definitely. It's almost like you're going on a tour of like all bachelor hometown dates.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I told my dates, like, I didn't want them to be just dinner dates, because I feel like The Bachelor, when that show's on and they do adventurous stuff, or it's a group date at an amusement park, or they bring them to their hometown and they do they're a pilot or they're windsurfing or something, like, it's people like seeing people do those things, and not so much. Sometimes it's nice when it gets intimate and it's a conversation and it's documented. But also sometimes there's like privacy with that as well. And so, I think some of those adventurous type things are really unique.
Totally. Have you been surprised by any of either the girls or the places where you're like, oh, I would never before have seen myself dating someone from like whatever, like Florida or Washington State, or like I could never see myself like living here, but now that I've had this experience, like, oh yeah, like this is something, or this is not something that would work for me.
Yeah, I think for me personally, like, area is a big thing, and like weather and stuff like that. So like there's been places where I visited and I'm like, oh, this state is amazing, but maybe necessarily my date wasn't like the best date, or or vice versa. I'm like, oh, this date was amazing, but this state, like, no, thank you, And so it just kind of your own personal preference. It's like when people move. Some people have the preference of like weather. Others just like if it's quiet or busy or fun things to do or nightlife or or animals and things like that. So there's a lot of just like different personal preferences. And so I think there's been some where where it's been both positive, where I'm like, oh, the date was awesome and the location, and I'm like, oh, I could totally see myself being in that area or whatnot. And those are obviously like some of the funnest dates because they go hand in hand, and it goes all right, I guess.
Of course.
Have you experienced like going on a date with someone in a different town? Like, I'm assuming probably, but like, yeah, have you?
Yeah. I've definitely, So I lived in LA for a bit. I did like a
Oh,
semester of school there, and then I've actually ended up like going back there a ton, and I've dated a few people who lived in LA. So I've definitely
okay.
done like California style dates.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, in dating these people, it was a really hard thing for me because they either like lived in LA or were moving to LA. And like after my experience living there, and like my whole family's in New York. I was like, this is like, it was a really big issue almost because I want to stay in New York. And I like, it's like, no matter how much I liked this person and wanted to be with them, like it was always this big weight of like, well, they're there and they don't want to be here, or maybe they'll move back to New York at some point, but not for a while. And like, I can't see myself leaving New York. And if I were to, it would just be for that person. And that's a lot of pressure to put on a
Yeah.
relationship. So that was definitely tough. Other than that, I don't think I've like gone on dates in other places, but I should. I mean, I'm dating somebody now, so maybe we'll do 50 of our own dates in 50 states.
There you go. There
That would
you
be
go.
so fun. Wait, that's so cool. Wow. Okay, I'm inspired. It's happening. He's going to be listening to this and being like, "Oh no." um,
That is like interesting though that you brought that up. It's a good point, like on how uh, the ones who like to be in their hometown or move away, and so for me, like a fun fact about me is I've actually, and it's gonna be funny because I'm the guy who's I'm Mr. 50 dates guy, but I've like never had a girlfriend, and I think
okay.
and I think it's because I've always been on that roadblock of I know I'm going somewhere else and I don't want to like fall in love or catch feelings for someone and then have that crossroad like you were talking about. Well, like would I want to stay here? I want to be back home
Right.
and things like that. For me, it was like in Montana growing up, I knew I didn't want to get a girlfriend because I knew I was going to go out of state for college. And then in North Dakota, I knew I was definitely not going to be in I don't want to live in North Dakota my whole life. I knew it was pretty temporary. And a lot of the girls up there that I met, like they were born, raised, and they wanted to live and die there. And I just didn't want to like, I didn't want to sacrifice like what my dreams and ambitions were for a girl. And so I just never committed and things like that. And I mean, when you get in relationships, like you have to sacrifice, you have to, spend time with them and make sacrifices. I understand that, but I've honestly been like scared to do that because I don't want to have that crossroad or like spend 4 years of my life with someone and then I'm like, oh, they want to stay here, I don't, then it's just tough, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. As hard as it is, as I like you mentioned, like it's scary to get yourself into that situation, but I have respect for you for like realizing that about yourself and sticking to that. Cause I think what happens is sometimes like people have that in their head, but then they let themselves get into something with someone and then both people end up getting really fucking hurt at the end of the day. So it's actually like really cool the way that you have known this about yourself and you obviously have a lot of ambition and passions and like big goals and dreams. So it's cool that you're still having these dating experiences. You're having these amazing life experiences where you're learning about yourself and about other people and like human interaction and connection, but you're doing it in a way that isn't going to hurt anyone or yourself.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. I like applaud you on that.
Oh,
so what is next for you after you finish this? Are there any dates or states you're going to want to go back to, or are you going to do 50 chicks in 50 countries? What's the plan?
Yeah. So, I mean, after this whole thing, I've thought about trying to do something fun because I almost do feel like my followers and people have been, following along my journey. I feel like they almost do deserve like some sort of end where I like say who my favorite was, or I go visit my favorite and like reveal it in a fun way or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I did tell all my like I like to think I'm a nice guy, and so I told my dates that I would never want to like rank them or ever put them in a situation where it was like, oh, here's my favorite, here's my least favorite. I like never want to do that to someone. So I don't know. I still like face the fear of if I picked a favorite, like some of my other dates who had a really good time with me, they're like, oh darn, I just like don't want to like upset anyone.
Yeah.
So we'll see on all that. But in terms of like the big picture, it's interesting. It can go in a couple different ways. I'm right now planning to develop it into a season 2. And I've laid this foundation now where I consider this all season 1. And I know what's worked, what hasn't worked, what's been good, what's been bad. And I basically think that if I try and create a season 2 and I bring on a new bachelor. Then I become more of like a host role to this. And then I start a recruitment process for a new
Ooh.
bachelor, new dates, things like that. Or, I've thought about, oh, do I stay in it? And then I bring on someone, we do double dates, stuff like that, and so or do I have a girl do this with, 50 different gentlemen? And so, there's all kinds of routes to it. I see that the sky's the limit. Like there's not really a ceiling to it, and there's a bunch of different avenues it could go down. So I'm curious when I get back home to get to the drawing board and just try to develop this into a season two, and then like release the season two like tour where it's the schedule of us going out and what states we'll be in and when and highlighting these new group of individuals. I think that just be really cool.
I'm obsessed with, I mean, I'm smiling so big, like this entire time my face hurts. That is so cool. I'm picturing you now back after these next few dates, back in your room with your whiteboard and like all your pieces of paper with all your ideas. That's so cool. And yeah, I mean, the sky definitely is the limit. So it's really cool that you're thinking about all the different options. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm like, and I have a lot of time to think when I'm driving to state. I'm like, I'm always just brainstorming. Okay, I could do this, or I could do this, or I'll try this, or I'll type something in my phone. So it's going to be fun to try and execute and bring them all to life.
Definitely. Okay,
Yeah.
so before I let you go, we have a few like general dating questions from our
Yeah.
listeners.
Okay.
Okay, first one. If he takes 3 days to text back, should I reply? If yes, how long should I wait, or should I reply right away? As the guy in the room, what do you think of that?
So if someone doesn't text you back for 3 days, should you
Mhm.
text them? That's.
Should you reply? And if so, like, do you reply right away, or do you also wait a few hours or a few days?
I say reply. I mean, I think the really toxic thing is like this cat and mouse game of like, oh, I'm going to wait 15 minutes to open this, or I'm going to reply to him tomorrow, or I'm not going to respond right away because I'm too eager. Like, it's just at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of BS. It's like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, just if I like you and you like me, or we're both interested in each other, can we not just text or snap when we're both available to do so? So I think,
Yeah.
don't try to avoid all games. And if you want to talk to someone, but also be self-aware enough to like not bug them or respect their time, or don't be annoying. But I would think
Yeah,
reply.
100%. I think the second you get down the path of playing these games and timing things out, you're doomed. Like it's not going
Oh yeah.
anywhere if that's how you're going about it. I think you have to just like if you see a text and you want to respond, respond. If you're busy, respond when you're not busy anymore and just that's how it's got to be. If you're playing this like you said cat and mouse game, it's not going anywhere.
100%. Yeah.
Cool. All right, the next one. Can a girl ask a guy for a second date?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I
Absolutely.
I think that gives like a guy. I think sometimes there's this pressure on a guy to do a bunch of things, and they're always just so. A lot of the times they're just so afraid to do them because they don't know what to expect from the girl, and I
Mhm.
mean confidence builds when there's like evidence showing it's going good, right? Like oh, all like on a first date, you might want to ask for her number at the end, or you might want to try and give her a kiss at the end, or you might want to ask her for a second date at the end, whatever it is. If you're confident enough that the date went well, she was being flirty or she was being fun, or like, you build that confidence. But if you don't really know and a girl, brings it out for you, you're going to be like, oh, yes. Or, oh, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
I think if a girl asks for a second date, that's awesome. If a guy doesn't want to, I mean, you gotta just roll with it, I guess. But
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And I think from a girl's perspective, like, well, here's what I'll say. Every time I've asked a guy if like a girl can ask a guy out on a date, they've been like, hell yes. Like that is so attractive because girls don't do that. So when they
yeah,
do, it's like it's bold and it's hot and it's great and it makes me excited. So like,
yeah,
yeah, it's scary because you're like worried you're gonna get rejected or whatever. But like if they're talking to you, they're likely interested in going on a date with you.
yeah,
And if you feel like the date went really well and you're still talking after, then like, yeah, the signs are all there. So just like do it. It'll be great.
exactly, exactly.
Okay. And then how do you turn a first date into friends with benefits?
Hmm. Well, I'd say you gotta find out what the other person's motive is, like basically through conversation. I mean, if you're talking to someone and they say they just got out of a very committed relationship and they're looking for, like, you can tell when you ask certain questions or when certain stories are brought up, you can almost tell if someone's like really emotional or they're looking for someone or the way they talk. Like, I mean, if me and you are out and we're talking, if me and you are on a date and we're trading stories, and all of a sudden I start telling you stories about me bringing home a girl in college, or me and this one girl, me and my ex or something. Like, you might, develop this picture of me that, oh, like he's hooking up or he's like this, stuff like that, or he's not like as sheltered or whatever that may be, or reserved. And then from there, you can kind of gauge on how their personalities are. So I think if you ask certain questions about things without being like too open ended, and you just share stories and get to know each other, then from there, I think it just comes with, I don't know, like I would say just, it almost naturally comes. I would say like you do a follow-up date or you hang out with them in a more relaxed setting. I think like if you're constantly going on dinner dates or something, like that's not necessarily the way to go about things. But I think like, oh, go to a bar and have a couple of drinks, like, so you're more relaxed with each other, stuff like that. Like, I think that can help turn in, because once moves are made or like friends with benefits, like it's crossed into that, then it's pretty much like that's what it is. It's just that first occurrence, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point about not continuously going on dinner dates. I think if you keep doing things that are like romantic date vibey, then somebody's going to get the wrong message, and that will probably lead to someone getting really like disappointed or hurt. So I think, yeah, I like what you said about asking a lot of questions and kind of just getting a feel through conversation. And then I think if you do think you are entering like friends with benefits territory, I think at some point you have to address it. Like you have to both be like, this is what this is. And I know I previously did a friends with benefits episode where I brought on a former friend with benefit of mine.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. But it worked for a while until it didn't. But the reason that it worked was because we were so open about it. Like we communicated, like overly communicated about the fact that it was friends with benefits every step of the way. And I think that's the only way that it can actually work. Like if you both know exactly where you stand. And if that, for everyone listening, if you're curious and you haven't listened to that episode yet, definitely check it out. It's a really, really interesting and raw and vulnerable conversation with my friend Alex and I. And it did not end well, to say the least, but it was fun while it lasted.
wait, the podcast episode didn't, or like how you guys?
The friends with benefits didn't. It definitely ended with a lot of like there were feelings, and then there was sadness, and then I mean he was one of my best friends for like years before, and it took a really long time to fix our friendship after that.
Gotcha. So. Yeah, I think that's a very strong point. Is setting those guidelines and boundaries, because that's ultimately leads to normally someone getting hurt if they have more feelings or it's not communicated, or the guy or the girl is like, what are we? Like that question is, can be a jolt to the gut sometimes, but if you communicate it, good.
Yeah, communication. Every single episode of Seeing Other People comes back to communication. Just communicate, everyone. We can do it. I believe in you. Matt, thank you so much. This has been so fun. I'm so excited to watch the rest of your journey unfold, and I'll be very much on the edge of my seat staying tuned for season 2. Where can all of our listeners find you and follow you and stay up to date with everything you're doing?
Yeah, so I appreciate you having me on. It was great talking to you. We had a great conversation. I feel like I hope we helped some of the listeners with some maybe questions they have, or with some maybe relationship advice and stuff. So that's awesome. I always encourage people to follow my journey and check out my website at 50datesfiftystates.com, and then also I'm really TikTok heavy, so I encourage people to check out my TikTok 50 Dates 50 States, and then my Instagram at Matthew Wurnig. And when people go to my website, they can see all my socials listed and things like that. So, and read about my journey and see all my dates and all that good stuff.
Amazing. Everyone can go down a rabbit hole of all of the dates that Matt has gone on, which I think is what every single person is going to do after listening to this. Well, thank you again so much. This has been so great. And to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next Tuesday.